Hello everyone, welcome back to Lorcana. Are you struggling to top your locals, or maybe you just want to improve going into the Set 9 tournament season? Well, this video will potentially be for you. I'm going to look at some of the tips and strategies that I use in Lorcana that have helped me to climb the ladder and get to where I am today. Over my course of my Lorcana career, after starting in Set 4, I've had over 30 top 8 finishes, as well as several wins and also a second place at Axion. So make sure to stay tuned to the end of the video, see how you can improve your Lorcana game. In this video, we're going to talk about deck building, resource management, different matchups in your games, and how to review your own gameplay, as well as some other tips and strategies that I personally use to help get you to your greatest finish ever in the next Set Champs. Section 1, deck building. Deck building can be quite a controversial topic in Lorcana. What I mean by this is a lot of newer players especially will try to build the ultimate deck just based on cards that they really like or cards that have cool effects. Don't get me wrong, this can be really good, and I definitely recommend for anyone that wants to make a deck their own to try and add any of the cool cards they like into it. It will make it far more fun and enjoyable. But if you want tournament success, it's essential that you try and go with something that's already built and go from there. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying go and copy every single meta deck that you see. It's not going to work for you, especially because a lot of players' decks are built dependent on their play style. For me especially, all my decks are built on my own fundamentals. I'll often take a pre-functioning meta deck, see what's doing really well. For example, in the last set, we knew that Amber Steel aggro was performing really well. I will then take that deck, tech it to my own style, adding in cards that I enjoy playing with, and then it's going to be more suitable for me when I'm playing. For any new player in Lorcana, my best advice is go to inkdecks.com. Inkdecks has all the results of all the Lorcana tournaments that are happening currently. You can go through there, see what colour combinations and what decks specifically are winning, take that deck, learn it, practice it, and then once you're ready, add in your own cards. Every single deck is going to have a fundamental core. By core, I mean cards that cannot be taken out of the deck whatsoever. You'll see this with so many different decks. A great example is the DKP Shark list. On his Ruby Saf list, the deck will not function without Ramp, without Maui Shark, and also without his manners. It was clutch for that strategy working. However, there are some certain tech cards that you can add in there to make it better for your own style. You could look at Vitalisphere, you could look at Scar Vicious Cheetah, you could look at other cards like Big Sisu to wipe boards. They're not predominantly always in the list, and you don't need it to win with that deck, but these tech cards can make it better and suit your style more. So for any newer players, make sure to go with something that's already built, learn the deck, and then after that, start adding in cards. If you're an already established player, just make sure to have a little play around with what's currently working, find out what your play style is, and then master the deck from there. Section 2, the Mulligan and the early game. So the Mulligan is something that is always overlooked in Lorcana. A lot of people think that it doesn't really matter as long as you have some of the cards that you're looking for. This is completely wrong. A lot of the time, your turn 0 is what decides most games from the get-go, especially with aggro decks. A lot of people think as long as you've got your openers, you are fine to go. However, this is not how it always works. Different decks are always going to have different recommended cards, but in certain matchups, you're going to want to change your opening hand depending on this. For example, if I was ever playing against an Emerald deck, I'm going to expect Ursula on turn 2. So it's smart to get rid of any Song cards in your hand because they're going to be able to rip resources out of your hands. For decks like Steel Song or Amber Steel aggro, it's essential that they think forward with this. Obviously, it's great being able to utilise the Cinderella on turn 1 and then sing with it, but what's worse than not being able to get it off is then losing cards alongside this as well. As a general basis, I think in your hand, you're looking for a turn 1, a turn 2, a turn 3, and a turn 4. And this is a really good strategy for anyone who's a little bit newer to the game. Please make sure that you have some inkable cards in your hand so you can always get the cards out. You want to ink at least once per turn, as well as play a card on every turn as well. Sometimes, if we're going a little bit more advanced, you can utilise the Shin Miri line, which means you're playing a turn 1 card, and then on your turn 2, you play 2 1-costs, so you're then getting more board presence. This tactic is really useful for aggro decks, being able to spread out the board and put more pressure on your opponent. But sometimes it is better just utilising the bigger cards, taking the turn 2 card, the turn 3, and the turn 4. As a general basis, if you utilise this line, you should be comfortable to be able to take over any matches, no matter what situation that you're in. Your Mulligan also really links into your deck building philosophy as well. The big part of this is uninkables. A great example of this is in a previous video, my Amber Steel aggro build, I mentioned that the opponent that I played in one of the Swiss rounds, he just had no inkable cards in his hand. He got out his turn 1 and his turn 2 plays, but after that, he just drew into uninkable, uninkable, uninkable. For that reason, he was unable to play any cards or ink any cards on his turn 2, 3, 4, and 5. Obviously, since I was playing an aggro quicker build, it just meant I stormed through the game and he wasn't able to do anything about this. Unfortunately, he prioritised some of his better and his more useful cards. Obviously, uninkable cards tend to be a lot more powerful, but because of this, he wasn't able to be in the game whatsoever. I'd always recommend saving your better and stronger cards for later in the game. If you have an inkable card, it's essential to keep it in your hand. Sometimes you're not going to have the best curve in the world, but it's always going to be better to have a curve than no curve whatsoever. Make sure to be sensible with what you keep in the hand, and if you don't desperately need it, just send it back and you can draw into it later in the game. Section 3, resource management. Something that I hear a lot of local players talk about is resource management. The big question that always comes to mind is when do I ink and when do I conserve cards in my hand? And it is a really difficult one to answer because this will always be game dependent. However, I'd also suggest that it depends on what deck that you're playing. If you're playing a more control style deck, I'd say it's essential that you ink every single turn. For a deck like Ruby Amethyst, for example, I'll still be inking even when I'm on 9, 10 and 11 ink. The reason for this, I want to be able to play multiple cards out at the same time. I want to have big, powerful turns where I'm fully utilising every option that I have. When it comes to a more aggro style deck, for example, Amber Steel aggro or maybe a Purple Steel mid-rangey style, sometimes you can stop inking a little bit earlier because you're playing a lower cost curve. A lower cost curve means your characters and other cards do not cost as much because they're lower cost. The little symbol on the top left tells you how much each card costs. A card like Big Sisu, for example, is 8 to be able to use, so it takes a lot of resources to be able to get out. If I want to be able to use Sisu and a location on a single turn, I'm probably going to be spending 11 or 12 ink. Whereas in an Amber Steel aggro deck, I'm utilising maybe 1, 2 or 3 costs on most of my characters. So if it is suitable in the game, once I get to 3, I can probably stop there. There is a single example I do want to discuss on ink management. I did say before that you should always ink on a control deck. However, sometimes you'll get into situations where you just do not have enough resources in your hand. I am going to say occasionally you can get away and still stay in the game by not inking on a turn, but I wouldn't do this unless you were past at least 5 ink. Doing this any earlier on, you're going to really struggle to get anything out and you are most likely to lose the game. In a control versus control matchup, it's going to be who has the most resources and who has the most cards in hand that wins them the game. So you need to be so careful when you're doing this. If your only inkable option in your hand is a card which is going to be super useful in a couple of turns, then yes, you can keep it on that rare situation. However, if it's something that's not desperate for you and something that's not guaranteed to win you the game, then keep it in your ink and just keep going up. On Blurple, for example, there are times where I think, oh, this card could be useful in 2 or 3 turns, but I don't desperately need it right now. So I'll continue to increase my ink and then go up to a point where when I top into bigger characters, I can play them out easily. In most decks that aren't aggro or tempo, you are looking for your bigger characters, so continuing to ink is completely essential. Section 4, matchup mindset. So in matchups, it's really important to not only know what you want to do, but what your opponent is going to be doing as well. One of the best ways that I train is by trying to get a big understanding of all the decks that are currently in the meta. And that's why I swap decks so many times when I'm going through Soul Champs. I don't just want to understand how to play the deck that I'm playing, but I want to know what turns my opponent is likely to make if they have perfect curve. And I want to know what cards they're going to have in their hand. If you ever play a game against me, you'll often hear me working out to myself the potential cards that you could have in your hand. I might say to myself, okay, turn 2, they could have this, this and this. If I exert my card, I've got risk of this going or this going, and then I can then play this on my next turn. It's important to always think 3 steps ahead in Lorcana. A lot of mistakes that beginner players make, or people who are on a more casual level, is they only think about what they're going to be doing on their specific turn. But it's important to always think ahead. A great example of this is when you're playing against Amber decks when your opponent has Rapunzel in the deck. You need to be aware of exerting any of your cards because they could crash into your card, get free damage on the card, play down the Rapunzel and get a load of draw from it. So as much as sometimes it will be useful to take out their character to stop them from questing, sometimes it can give them a better later game advantage, so you need to limit that as much as possible. Always think not just what am I going to be doing now, but what do I need to do a couple of turns down the line to make sure you can control the game and take it at the very end. Section 5, board state. In Lorcana, you're either going to be on the attack or chasing. What I mean by this is at all points you're in a race to get to 20 lore. No matter what happens in the game, it's the first person to get to 20 is going to win. You're either going to be trying to run away from your opponent and making them chase you, or you're going to be chasing them and trying to stop them from getting there. Obviously, depending on the deck that you're using, if you're playing a more control-based deck, you're setting up your later game whilst trying to control your opponent. You win by getting the ideal board state situated for you. In a quicker deck, you'll just try to get to 20 and pull every strategy you can to try and stop your opponent from stopping you. In some ways, it's like a weird game of Mario Kart. It's really important to be able to make decisions when it's important to quest out your characters and leave them vulnerable. A lot of people often make the mistake of thinking, well, if I quest out all my characters, I'm closer to 20, so this is surely a good state to be in. But what you need to measure is if you quest your characters, are you at risk of losing them? It doesn't matter how quick your deck is, if you exert everything, make it vulnerable, and your opponent can take out your board state, you're going to find it really, really hard to be able to get over the line. A lot of the time, you'll see stronger players not exerting their characters, even on a quicker deck. You keep them on the board and you try and keep what's called tempo. Tempo means that you're keeping in control of the speed of the game and your opponent isn't able to run away too much from you. There will be situations where my opponent's starting to catch up with me and I might exert characters to force them to make ideal trades. An ideal trade will be a trade which gets rid of my character, but it also gets rid of theirs. However, if they've got something on the board, for example Calhoun, which has resist, I wouldn't exert my low strength character, allow Calhoun to take that out, they get law from the trade, and then I lose my character, because they're gaining board state. You want to always look to have the most characters on the board at any given time. If you have the most characters, it's so easy for you to keep the tempo and then go over to the 20 and win yourself the game. Section 6, learning from every game that you play. This section is probably the most important section of all, learning from your mistakes and learning from what was successful in your games. I see a lot of players just play a game when they go to local league nights and then just do nothing from it. I do something a little bit different. Every single time I play, I keep notes in a little Lorcana journal. This little book has been absolutely essential for my gameplay development. It's so clutch for me to be able to look back at previous games and get an understanding for what worked, but also what didn't work. If I ever play a game against somebody, I take a note in my journal and I write down who I played against, what deck they were playing, what lines worked, what lines weren't successful, any misplays I had, or any achievements that I've had during the game. It's important not to beat yourself up with your losses. Don't get me wrong, it can feel absolutely crushing when you lose against somebody, but the main thing is what you can take from it. Being able to note down that, yeah, I lost the game and it sucked, I got beat badly. However, I made this play, and this play, and that was really good. I remember my lines, is often useful to keep your spirits up and keep you motivated for your next games. After I've written notes in my journal, I then transfer all of that onto a Word document which I keep stored on my phone, and I use these notes to build a guide on what to expect when I'm playing any matchup. For example, this set I've been playing a lot of Blurple, so on my phone I have notes for what is successful against Ruby Amethyst, what's successful against Emerald Amethyst Tempo, Discard, Green Steel, Amber Steel, Aggro, and then every time I go into a tournament, I can get a feel for what people are playing in the room, I can make predictions on what people will be playing, based on what decks I've seen them play before, and I can then prepare before the game for what strategies and lines I'm going to be making during the game. It's really essential, no matter what you do, win or lose, you have an understanding of what works and what doesn't. Make sure to keep note of everything, go back, read all your notes, and then prepare yourself better as much as possible for future events. Right, thank you to everyone who stayed along for the full video. In the comments, please let me know what tips and strategies you've used to help you improve your Lorcana game. What's helped you be successful, and what would you recommend that another player could use in their games to help them improve? We've just hit 150 subscribers on the channel, so we're really going up. The next goal is to try and hit 250. Hopefully, we can do that by the end of August. If we can, I'll be more than pleased. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. Any videos that you want to see upcoming, please leave in the comments, and I'll make sure to reply to everyone. All the best. Bye.